Okay, so next is the nitrogen cycle, which again, like the carbon cycle that we discussed earlier, it's a cyclic process, and we can start from any point, but for our convenience we start from the atmosphere. So nitrogen from the atmosphere, it's removed, or rather it's actually fixed. So free nitrogen gas in the atmosphere, it's fixed by different ways or different methods, and we are going to learn about those different methods. So the whole nitrogen cycle consists of three different processes, distinct processes that are actually taking place. So in the nitrogen cycle, what you have is the removal of nitrogen content from the atmosphere, which is the nitrogen fixation. So nitrogen is actually fixed from the atmosphere by organisms, by specifically bacteria. So we are going to talk about that. So nitrogen fixation, and then we have nitrification process. So we have nitrification process, nitrogen fixation process, and lastly we have denitrification, the removal of that particular nitrogen back into the atmosphere again. So these are the three processes that are actually taking place in this diagram that is shown over here. So please pay your full attention, because this is a bit complex. I am going to strictly adhere to the O-level syllabus of Cambridge O-level syllabus, and there are some things that we are not required to know. Suppose, for example, the names of the bacteria that are actually the specific names of the bacteria that are involved here. So in the syllabus it says specifically not to mention or not to know about all those bacteria. You just simply mention nitrogen fixing bacteria or nitrifying bacteria and denitrifying bacteria and so on and so on. You don't have to know the exact names. If you know, it's good, but you try to keep it simple as possible at ordinary level. So again, nitrogen in the atmosphere needs to be removed. So nitrogen here, it's in the atmosphere. So nitrogen in atmosphere needs to be removed, and that happens in two ways. One, it's happening by nitrogen fixing bacteria, hence the process is actually called nitrogen fixation. So there are bacteria in the soil that, to be more specific, it's in legume plants, in root nodules. So they're found in root nodules of leguminous plants. Root nodules of leguminous plants, and here one example is given, which is called rhizobium. So if you know the name, it's okay. If you don't, it's fine. Rhizobium is the leguminous plant, and its roots have swellings, and it's in those swellings that there are nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, bacteria that fixes atmospheric nitrogen, which finds its way into the soil pores, and in the soil pores the bacteria uses up that nitrogen, in fact, to make ammonia, NH3. So you have nitrogen fixation making ammonia, and the name of the bacterium that is there in the root nodules is Azotobacter. So Azotobacter is the bacteria that is found in the root nodules. Again, the CI syllabus doesn't require you to learn or memorize or know the names, exact names of the bacteria, but if you know it, it's good. Or in general terms, you can say nitrogen fixing bacteria. So you can call them nitrogen fixing bacteria. So that is what is called causing nitrogen fixation. There is another way in which atmospheric nitrogen can be converted to ammonia, and then it trickles down, and that is when lightning and rain happens. So atmospheric nitrogen can also find its way into the soil and into ammonia by lightning process. So through lightning process, it again gets converted or turned into ammonia. Then when the plants decay, what happens is, in the decaying, as we have seen in the carbon cycle, detritus, where microorganisms are feeding on dead and decaying matter. So there are bacteria which are called cyanobacteria, and other decay organisms such as funguses and all, they decompose the dead matter, and ammonia is the result. So whatever is happening, ammonia is being formed inside the soil, in the soil pores. So that is actually called nitrogen fixation. So the bacteria are actually fixing from dead organisms the nitrogen content from the atmospheric level, and they are fixing it up into ammonia gas. Now what happens from there onwards? What happens with this ammonia, NH3? Well, NH3 undergoes changes to its structure, and again that happens by bacteria, certain bacteria. There are two types of bacteria that are doing this, but together they are called nitrifying bacteria. So the bacteria name of the bacteria is nitrifying bacteria, and the process that is happening is nitrification. So the previous process was nitrogen fixation, where nitrogen from various sources was fixed into ammonia, and now plants cannot, or roots cannot, absorb ammonia as is. So the ammonia has to be converted, it has to be remodified, and the last product needs to be nitrate ions that it can absorb, the plant roots can absorb, and nitrates are soluble. So in conversion from ammonia to nitrate ions, the process is called nitrification, and that is happening by a group of bacteria called nitrifying bacteria. Now this happens in a series of steps. First, the ammonia is converted to nitrite ions, TRITE, nitrite, NO2 minus. So it's getting converted to NO2 minus from ammonia by nitrosomonas bacteria. So nitrosomonas, again, you don't have to remember these names, but if you do, it's good. Or you just can say in a generalized form, nitrifying bacteria. So one type of nitrifying bacteria, nitrosomonas, is converting ammonia to nitrite ions, NO2 minus ions. But the problem with this is not soluble. So as a result, it cannot be absorbed by the roots of the plants. So they need to be converted into a more soluble form, which is the nitrate ions, NO3 minus ions, which the plants can use for various purposes, including making of amino acids and proteins that builds up the structures inside the plants. So the nitrites get converted to nitrate ions by nitrosococcus bacteria. It's another type of nitrifying bacteria. So nitrites, insoluble, cannot absorb, to nitrates, soluble, can be absorbed by the roots, as you can see the arrow pointing there. So this ammonia to nitrate ion conversion is called nitrification process, happens through two bacteria, and we call them nitrifying bacteria. All right, so that's fixed. So the nitrogen is fixed into the body of the plant. Now again, it's a cyclic process. So when the plant dies, dead and decay matter, and then cyanobacteria and other funguses and other decomposing bacteria again converts it into ammonia, and this keeps on happening. Now it's being locked up, it's still being locked up, nothing has been given back to the atmosphere. So the nitrogen ions, or the nitrogen gas, sorry, is not given back into the atmosphere. So how does that happen if it keeps on continuing to be locked up here in this process, and then doesn't return to the atmosphere? Then how does the cycle actually continue? Well, what happens is there is a denitrification process. So we are removing nitrogen content from the compounds over here, excessive compounds, and you're releasing that nitrogen into the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. That is happening by denitrifying bacteria. So denitrifying bacteria, there are different types. Denitrifying bacteria removes nitrogen, releases it as a gas into the atmosphere, and then nitrogen is available into the atmosphere, and it is actually the most abundant element in the atmosphere, which is occupying about 78% nitrogen gas, so 78% of the atmosphere. So denitrifying bacteria, through the process of denitrification, is removing that nitrogen into the atmosphere again. Now what is it actually doing, denitrifying bacteria? Well, denitrifying bacteria is actually taking excess nitrates or even ammonia. So it can take ammonia. So there are bacteria that can actually convert ammonia to nitrates and nitrates, which is nitrifying bacteria. There are denitrifying bacteria that converts excessive ammonia into nitrogen gas into the atmosphere, and there are also bacteria that converts nitrates, which are excessive in amount, excessive nitrates, back into the atmosphere. So that's how the uh, nitrogen is released into the atmosphere, and that's how the uh, process continues, and the balance and the cycle is actually maintained. So I hope I have explained it in a very simplified manner. Uh, in this video, in this lecture tutorial or lecture video, I'm going to embed videos that explain the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the water cycle as well. So water cycle is not officially mentioned in our syllabus, but there are sometimes questions asked or related questions asked. So formally I'm not going to have a tutorial on water cycle, but there will be a video linked with this lecture, so that the water cycle is also explained within that video. So if you watch those three videos, the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle and the water cycle, hopefully you are not going to have much doubts. But again, if you do, then please let me know in the comment section, or contact me through Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or write in our group, or contact me through any other way that you can. So this is the end of lecture 4 that was designed for you. Lecture 5 will contain the malarial parasite, the life cycle of the malarial parasite, and how actually malaria is related to the disease, or how female Anopheles mosquito is related to the disease. And then once we study that, that's going to be the next lecture, lecture 5. And once we are done with that, we are going to see the effect of humans on the environment, so such as deforestation and the other processes that we are actually causing, or cutting down trees and all that. So how is that having an effect on the environment, and how it's having an effect on the ecosystem? So that's what we learn in lecture number 5. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for joining me today. Hopefully this has been really helpful, and I'll see you next time. All right, so till then, stay home, stay safe. This whole video series is because of the COVID outbreak, so please do the needful. Be careful, do not come in contact with so many people. Stay home, stay isolated till this outbreak is over, and then we can all go back to our normal lives. So till the next lecture, see ya. Bye bye.